Got it. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think we've got a pretty good attendance so far. So this is a great time to get tonight's Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association All Candidates Forum underway. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. A big thanks to all the council, mayoral candidates, and of course to everyone viewing at home. We hope you take away something this evening. My name is Rob Murray. I'll be your moderator tonight. Of course, to start things off, we have to acknowledge the place where we are. The town of Banff is located on the traditional lands of Treaty 7 territory, comprised of the Stoney Nakoda nations of Wesley, Chiniki, and Bearspaw, 3 nations of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika, and the Tsuut'ina of the Dene people. An acknowledgement of Treaty 7 region is a commitment to thinking about the past and what our relationship to Indigenous people means to us here today. So again, thanks for being here. Tonight's forum is brought to you by the Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association and the Rocky Mountain Outlook. Just a little heads up, if everyone is wanting to see everybody, you can head over to your Zoom options and switch to gallery view. Hopefully that should allow you to view all the candidates at the same time. Here's the general format for the evening. We're going to start tonight with the candidates, 14 of them, running for council in Banff. They will all get 1 minute to do an introduction in reverse of alphabetical order. That will be followed by 14 structured questions that have been put together by event organizers. We'll have 3 candidates selected randomly to answer each of them. All answers will be 1 minute. There will be a timer in the corner. Candidates will be able to follow that timer along, and we will be muting microphones and that sort of thing if we do go over time, just because we have to keep things rolling along here. So following those 14 structured questions, there'll be 7 questions submitted in advance by the public. 2 candidates will answer each of those, 1 minute to answer. All questions have been predetermined. The chat function and Q&A function have been disabled this evening for those who are watching, but these questions do cover a lot of ground. So hopefully for the audience, if you have a burning question, it'll get answered at some point during the evening. Following the candidate forum at about 6:45, we're going to take a short break, and at 7 o'clock resume with the mayoral forum and debate, and we'll kind of explain that as we get into that at that point in time. So if everybody's ready, again, we're going to have 1 minute each in reverse alphabetical order to for the candidates to provide some opening remarks. And that means we are going to start with Les Young. Les, if you want to unmute your mic, you can start talking, and we'll start the timer when you start going there. You're still on mute there, Les.
Okay, I think that has it. Good evening, everybody. And again, I'd like to thank you all for participating with us. I have lived in Banff since 1972, and I hope to bring the views of a long-term leaseholder resident, as well as those of other long-term residents and seniors to council as we try to wrap up from this COVID epidemic and get started on reopening Banff with different aspects of the train station transportation hub, for instance, traffic congestion, say at the post office corner, the Fenlands redevelopment at the rec center, and other issues like that. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. We're going to move on now to Mark Walker. Mark, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Rob. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to say thanks to the Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association and the Rocky Mountain Outlook for putting on our one and only Banff Forum. It's great to have this opportunity, so thank you. I've lived in Banff for 14 years. I have been and continue to be a ski instructor. I've been a bouncer, a hotel department head, and a tour bus guide. While I still teach skiing in the winters, I also now own and run a camping gear rental company called Rent-A-Tent. As one of your 6 elected councillors, I will bring a vision of Banff that leads the way in environmental, social, and economic sustainability. I will bring my skills as a communicator and my ability to work collaboratively towards a difficult goal. And I will bring my dedication to the goal of giving my daughter even more opportunities than I've been lucky enough to have. There's far too many issues to discuss here, but I encourage you to visit my platform on my website, themarkwalker.ca. Well,
I think we can see that there. Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Right on. Moving on now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Carrie Lee Schulteis. Carrie. Oh, you're still on mute there. Yeah, we still can't hear you.
Mute.
There we go. Okay, we got it. All right.
Hello, my name is Carrie Lee Schulteis. I've lived in Banff for 37 years, loving this beautiful, evolving community. What I'm hearing on the campaign trail is that our community is feeling disenfranchised, losing their sense of community in part as a result of living where the world visits. The continuing lack of affordable housing for both rental and purchase is a major issue and a passion project for me. The overwhelming theme for business is dealing with the fallout of the past 2 years of COVID that encompasses revenue shortfalls and staffing shortages. Working together, we can find solutions to implement. Leadership, community development, financial management, and a clear understanding of the balance needed for growth. These are the skills needed and what I will bring to the next council table. I can promise open and transparent communication with all stakeholders, citizens, businesses, and governing bodies.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Moving on now, please welcome Sean Rapley. Sean.
Thank you very much, Rob. Good evening. I arrived in Banff in 1989, and I've worked in various roles in the hospitality industry, both frontline positions and senior management. I was elected to town council in 1995 and gained a keen understanding of budgeting, financial issues, as well as governance challenges that we have in our unique situation in the park. Our community plan is currently overdue and needs to be reforged. It's easy to have a large number of people I've spoken to, both within the community and the business community, that they've been largely ignored by this previous council. That's their feeling. We must ensure that we communicate and involve all areas of the community in the process of charting our way forward economically and socially with our new community plan, which is our overarching document that drives all development and progress within the town. There's not enough time to talk about all the issues, but please visit my website at seanrapley.com to contact me or, sorry, I got cut off, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Please welcome Kaylee Ram. Go ahead, Kaylee.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Ram. I was born and raised in Banff. I'm a small business owner and an active member of the community. I first just want to provide answers to 2 inevitable questions. Yes, I do own ripped jeans, and yes, I did pay full price for them. Banff needs young and new voices. Growing up playing hockey taught me the value of teamwork and collaboration and emphasized the importance of community. I currently sit on the hospital board, the police advisory committee, and the advisory committees of Banff Lake Louise Tourism. I'm not interested in legacy. I'm motivated for the longevity success of our home. My goals for the future of Banff are focusing on being fiscally diligent and balancing the needs of tourism and community. Continuing to foster collaborations from local organizations are key to both supporting affordability and strengthening our sense of community. Leaning on the strength of being an active listener, I will seek first to understand before forming any conclusion. From emails to phone calls, Zoom meetings, and coffee chats are all ways that I plan on executing to promote my accessibility.
Thank you, Kaylee. Please welcome Hugh Pettigrew.
Well, good evening, Rob, and thanks everyone for running in this election. It's a pleasure to be part of the team, and Team Banff is my thing that I think we could all hang on to. I've been here 40 years. I moved here in 1982. And I've got 35 years of experience in both the private and public sector, mostly in engineering and construction. I've been a director of public works, I've been a manager, and I've worked for a number of municipalities reporting directly to council. I am married to Alana, who's committed to her community. She's the founder of Banff Food Rescue. Our three children were born here. Our children were born here at the hospital while we could still do that. There's a lot of costs of living issues in this town, and I can tell you that the next term is going to be very tough term for any council because we need to steer ourselves out of this pandemic. I did my homework, I've done my homework, and I'm ready. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work. My website, in my Facebook page, you can get more information at Hugh for Team Banff Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Please welcome Barb Pelham.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barb Pelham. I've been in Banff for 50 years and have been deeply involved in this community. What distinguishes me as a candidate is that I grew up here. I owned, operated, grew, and sold my business, Canada House Gallery. I've raised my 2 kids here and supported my parents as they aged and passed here. I really understand the depth of our funky mountain town. Growing business here was very challenging. Paying rent, supporting staff, building a brand, and riding the roller coaster of the tourism industry over 50 years. One thing I really learned was that keeping expenses related to revenues is essential. We have a serious tax revenue issue to face in the next few years, and we must continue to work on affordable housing. I understand that our community survives on tourism and that we need to work in concert with Parks Canada to protect the place we all love. Please vote for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barb. It's time now to welcome Chip Olver.
Hello, good evening. I've been working on your behalf on Banff Council since 1994. It's been a joy and an honor. Thank you for the support that you've given me to let me do this interesting, rewarding, and sometimes challenging work. I believe that a good place to live will be a good place to visit. And I'm ready to continue working on our pandemic response and recovery, housing and affordability, economic and environmental performance, and how we move people around. And I'm ready to get to work on our next community plan, and I hope you are too. All these issues, I welcome casual conversation and structured consultation with all stakeholders. I'd like to bring the knowledge, experience, and leadership that I've developed in over 2 decades on council back to the table. I'd love your support, and for more information, chipolver.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Chip. Moving on now, please welcome Dana Humbert.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone. Ultimately, I'm running because I've fallen in love with this amazing community that has so humbly welcomed my family. I am passionate about being on council because of the community. Before we arrived, when we arrived, and still to this day, we are made to feel welcomed, supported, and cared for. I want to help be a part of keeping that essence, the heart of the community, alive and well for generations to come. I can see a significant challenges coming before Banff over the next 4 years, and I would like to be as proactive as possible to make sure the residents and business needs and concerns are heard, addressed, and met. As appointed representative on the Municipal Planning Committee for the town of Banff, I understand the procedures, policies, and expectations for the town. This continues to be an excellent opportunity to learn and grow while serving the community to help this unique needs. Professionally, I'm a project manager with years of experience in all around Southern Alberta. My experience will help various aspects of municipal construction infrastructure and will be an asset to your council. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Next up, please welcome Stephanie Farracuti.
Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Farracuti. A little bit of my background. I was raised in Hamilton, Ontario, to a pretty large Italian immigrant family. I graduated in 2005 from McMaster University with a degree in psychology, and I was able to make my way to this mountain town almost a decade ago and have been fortunate enough to call this my home ever since. I have spent my time since moving here working entirely in the public service sector for Parks Canada, and more recently, as of 5 years ago, I had a son and now share my life with a little boy named Hercules. I am incredibly passionate and believe the priorities going forward need to be advocacy and representation for the working class, as well as the environment. I think these affect residents, businesses, and the visitor experience. And I offer an unbiased perspective of someone that is living with the challenges that we experience. I don't own a business. I'm not independently wealthy. I am simply a Banffite that is trying to make life better. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Up next, please welcome Ted Christensen.
Thanks, Rob. Well, let's get right into it with a reminder of what the 1989 Incorporation Agreement said. That why we are here as a community and why I'm here is to work on maintaining the town site as part of a World Heritage Site, to serve as our primary function as a center for visitors in the park and to provide such visitors with accommodation and other goods and services, to maintain a community character which is consistent with and reflects the surrounding environment, and to provide a comfortable living community for those persons who need to reside in the town site in order to achieve our primary function. And this is our ongoing work. How do we achieve that balance? That's the ongoing discussion. How will I interact? Facebook, email, phone, text, and on the street. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Please welcome now Grant Canning.
Thanks, Rob. If you could boil it down to one sentence, I'm running again because I'm proud of what we've accomplished over the past 4 years, and I want to see it continue. For instance, the Bear Street redevelopment, the TNU and the Astor housing projects, improvements to Rome Transit, implementing the paid parking system in the companion residential parking pass program, and most importantly, how this council has navigated our way through the pandemic, to only name just a few. All of these accomplishments have been difficult at times and even controversial, but in my mind, they are absolutely essential for the future of our town and for our community. From the very beginning, I have always believed that the role of a councillor is to make decisions in the best interest of the community as a whole. As a councillor, it is important to consider every resident, every person who calls Banff home, regardless of how long they've been here or what they do. That is how you build a strong and welcoming community. And it's for all of those reasons I ask for your support on election day. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Up next, please welcome Alan Buckingham.
Thanks, Rob. I'm a thinker and a planner who loves this urban small town in the mountains. I enjoy reading policy documents and going to meetings to talk about them. I've been fortunate to be involved in governing many different organizations, and I've had the opportunity to talk with and learn from some amazing people with some fascinating ideas. When I tell people about where I live, I'm struck by the opportunities we have to show the world how it's possible to live in a way that may be different from the current norm. How does a community thrive with a limit on its physical growth and respect for its maximum population? What does economic prosperity look like when commercial space is limited? Can we create a community whose respect for the natural environment helps wildlife to thrive and actually reduces the amount of carbon in the atmosphere? I think we can. I think we should. And I want to make sure ideas like these are front and center in our decision making. We need to be planning for the Banff we want to see in 50 years and working back from there for the decisions we make today, so we can create a community we're even more proud of.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. And finally, last but not least, Jessia Arsenio.
Hello, neighbors, and thanks, Rob. My name is Jessia C. Arsenio. I'm grateful for the opportunity to run for Town of Banff Council. I'm a relative newcomer to this community, having moved here 4 years ago. I was 24. The hustle and bustle of a destination town was familiar to me as someone born and raised in Niagara Falls. But before coming here, I'd never seen a mountain. Banff quickly became home. It's the place that made me who I am today and fortified my commitment to seeking an equitable future. However, I don't want Banff to leave people behind. I want Banff on the other side of COVID to be known as a place making extensive efforts to keep people here. There's tremendous value in cultivating and nurturing our community, and by extension, the obvious and growing vibrancy of our town. Whether it's housing that meets community needs, navigating a tax crunch, or scaffolding civil society initiatives to help us anticipate the hard road ahead, we need voices committed above all else to fairness, inclusion, and an informed understanding of our commitments to this land. My name is very Google friendly, and you can absolutely find me on Facebook. Hope you consider me at the ballot box.
Right on. Fantastic. We made it through opening remarks without any major technical hiccups or anything. Let's keep it up. Knock on wood. All right, let's move on to the structured questions. These have been put together by our hosts here at the Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association. There's 14 questions total. I'm going to pose them to 3 candidates who have been selected randomly, and you'll have 1 minute to respond. So this first one will go to Jessia, Stephanie, and Hugh in that order. So Jessia, question number 1. Tell me what your priority for council would be over the course of the next 4 years. You have 1 minute.
Over the course of the next 4 years, I think we absolutely have to privilege navigating the remainder of the COVID pandemic. I think that requires attitudes that are flexible and very willing to negotiate change with a wide variety of stakeholders. And I think we also have to pay mind to which gaps we might need to fill. I think pursuing an economy that seeks growth at all costs is not a way to go forward. So we should be seeking ways to move towards more of a steady state economy where we can more carefully negotiate our balance with nature and the balance between tourism and residents. I think that requires bringing a lot of people to the table, and that's why I think we need to ensure that we're building as inclusive a democracy as we can going forward. I think there's absolutely an appetite for that in the community, and I'd be looking forward to looking for creative ways to do that in council chambers.
Thank you. Stephanie Ferracuti, tell me what your priority for council would be over the course of the next 4 years.
The biggest priority for me is making sure that the working class people of Banff are included in as many decisions and motions as possible. I think that we are relying on them to be the source of our economic recovery out of this pandemic, which we are still navigating right now. And I think we can't go back to how we got here, which is just assuming that people are okay working full time and not having a livable wage and somehow making it in this town. If we want to support businesses and bring tourists back and make our experiences as authentic as possible, I think we have to start with residents and making sure that we are including the things that they are struggling with and how to listen to them, how to incorporate it, and to make sure that everything we do takes that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh Pettigrew, tell me what your priority for council would be over the course of the next 4 years.
Rob, there's certainly a lot of cost of living issues. And to me, this election is about economic recovery and whether or not we can afford the plans that we have in front of us, whether it's a capital program that's already looking at a deficit in terms of reserves and how we contribute to the reserves from taxes. The other one is we need to better understand how we're going to use or work to this 5-to-1 taxation split, while the balance of the assessments are a bit offset, meaning that the non-residential rates are lower, or assessments are lower. I don't know how we're going to exactly do this, but we need to have a team of leaders to address this, and I want to be at the table to do that. I want to lead that discussion. We have inclusive housing issues, and aging in place is a big topic for me. I'm certainly supportive of the Banff Inclusive Housing report, and it's been worked on by community members. I think a lot of things were magnified during COVID, and we need to resolve the remaining commercial developments as well. I'm certainly equipped.
All right, thank you, Hugh. That's your time. Moving on to question 2. This one is going to be for Alan Buckingham, Carrie Lee Schulteis, and Sean Rapley in that order. So Alan Buckingham, how would you go about developing an open and transparent working relationship with your fellow council members and with administration?
Thanks, Rob. I think that's a wonderful question. I think it's actually super important. The way that we deal with each other and the way we can work as a team, and that team includes council as well as administration, right? And it also includes the whole community. I like to think, and I get told, that I'm a person who listens well and communicates well and is good at having those conversations. So, I mean, to me, that's the key, is to be able to to sit together and just, be honest, be open, be vulnerable, and have those conversations. And that's how you create a working relationship that really lets everybody's voice be heard and lets those conversations happen so we can come to a consensus and move our way forward. And the same goes with dealing with administration, right? So it's making sure that you're able to listen, to hear what people are saying, have a discussion, ask the hard questions, tell each other when you don't actually agree, but then still be able to work together and move forward. So it's really about being able to build that relationship and facilitate those conversations.
Thanks, Alan. Moving on to Carrie Lee Schulteis. How would you go about developing an open and transparent working relationship with your fellow council members and with administration? You're muted again there, Carrie Lee. There you go.
I think one of the things that leans towards open and inclusive, sorry, I'm a little nervous here, communication, is that you have everybody around the table that will be impacted by it. And there wouldn't be any backdoor meetings or sidebars. Everything would be on the table if you're discussing it, and everybody would have input into it. That's it.
Thank you. Finally, Sean Rapley, how would you go about developing an open and transparent working relationship with your fellow council members and with administration?
Well, Rob, I've led many teams as a manager, as a participant in teams my whole life. And the key is listening. We've got to listen to everybody you work with, to understand their point of view, to be inclusive when you're making your decisions, and understanding the perspectives that they're bringing. It's key and it's important. It's also is understanding and recognizing that the administration has a set of expertise to bring to the table, and honoring that by listening to them and including their input into your deliberations. Transparency is key. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a fairly straightforward individual, very blunt. So I'm pretty set along with, as long as people are honest and straightforward, I'm ready to listen and incorporate their ideas in my deliberations.
Thanks, Sean. Just a heads up, I think your Wi-Fi is a little bit, it might be a little bit weak. You're breaking up a little bit there. I think we got the gist of what you were saying, but just a little heads up.
Okay, thanks.
Moving on to question 3, and this question is going to be for Ted Christensen, Les Young, and Mark Walker in that order. So Ted, how do you see maintaining a careful balance between working with administration and executing your responsibilities as an elected official? What's your approach to ensuring this balance if elected?
What else to tell you? Sorry. To maintain a careful balance, well, you have to approach these questions honestly. You have to do your homework and prepare. You have to get community consultation, and you have to be able to realize that the business across the table doesn't affect your personal relationship with your fellow councillors.
Okay, great, thank you. Moving on to Les Young. How do you see maintaining a careful balance between working with administration and executing responsibilities as an elected official? What's your approach to ensuring this balance if elected?
I think that everybody has to agree that not everybody will agree absolutely with everybody on all points, and that there has to be open discussion. Hopefully details that are requested by one person will be pertinent to the thoughts of somebody else, either as a councillor or as somebody in administration. And I would hope that any questions that might come up would be available to the public as a whole to be able to put some input into, and that all opinions are given equal consideration, and not to the to the extent that, well, this is how we've done things before, this is how we'll do things again. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mark Walker, how do you see maintaining a careful balance between working with administration and executing your responsibilities as an elected official? What's your approach to ensuring this balance if elected?
I mean, I think, the job of council is to provide direction to administration, have them go away and do their jobs that they are hired to do. They are experts in their field, that they're, hired under some pretty rigorous criteria, letting them do their jobs, come back with the recommendations. But remember, they are recommendations. We do need to engage the community in the options that are put forward by administration. And I think one of the ways to do that has been proposed is opening potentially the Governance and Finance Committee to more subject matter experts when things are coming forward. Currently, that committee is made up of council and administration, just like council meetings themselves. I think that's a great idea to explore in order to get a little bit more, a few more outside eyes for council to make informed decisions and provide that guidance to administration.
Thanks, Mark. Moving on to question 4. This question is for Grant Canning, Barb Pelham, and Chip Olver. It's a bit of a long lead up here. So Grant, changes to the 2015 Municipal Government Act requires municipalities to align to a 5-to-1 tax split. Banff remains non-conforming to this requirement. This exposes the town to unmitigated financial risk, which has not been accounted for in either the town's annual financial plan or business planning process. What steps would you take to ensure Banff is in conformance in conformance with these provincial requirements?
Thanks, Rob. The 5-to-1 tax split is something that the town of Banff is definitely going to have to struggle with in the next term, and the reason for that is because it really determines how much the taxation is between the commercial sector and the residential sector. What council has been doing, certainly through administration, has been lobbying the provincial government to phase that in a little bit longer. We are very unusual in the town of Banff because most of our municipal taxes actually come from the commercial sector, about an 80-20 split from the commercial relative to the residential. And as a result of that, we are very unique in the community. And so the 5-to-1 tax split is not as much of an issue in other areas of the province, but it certainly is within the town of Banff. And it's for that reason why we continue to lobby the provincial government to allow that to be phased in. And certainly moving forward, that's exactly what I would be pushing for as well.
Thanks, Grant. Moving on to Barb Pelham. What steps would you take to ensure Banff is in conformance with the 5-to-1 tax split as mandated by the province?
Thank you, Rob. This is a really juicy question, and there are, excuse me, tough answers to come. Currently, the commercial sector does pay far more tax than the Municipal Government Act would like, so we will need to adjust the tax rate and shift more onto the residential sector gradually. I do not recommend an abrupt phase in. I think it's something that we will need to take slow and easy. But I also think that this comes down to advocating the provincial government for resort municipal status. We need to keep pushing that. We do have a unique situation here with a very strong commercial base, and we do need to cooperate, collaborate, and work with multiple levels of government to assist our residents. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. And finally, Chip Olver, what steps do you take to ensure that Banff is in conformance with the 5-to-1 provincial tax requirements?
Thank you. The Municipal Government Act has set a 5-to-1 mill rate between commercial and non-residential. And that was because some communities in Alberta had mill rates as big as 18-to-1 and have had to work down towards 5-to-1. That didn't apply to us until this year. And we do have a 5-year phase in, and it didn't apply to us right away because any changes to the Municipal Government Act have to be signed off by the federal minister of Environment and Climate Change. And after prolonged discussions with the minister and departments like Justice, it does apply to us now, and we will need to work towards that. I agree that we need to look at alternate revenue, and resort municipality status would be an important thing to achieve in order to help offset the challenges as we work towards a 5-to-1 split.
Thanks, Chip. The next question is going to be for Dana Humbert, Jessia Arsenio, and Carrie Lee Schulteis. How familiar are you with the town's service review and their operating and capital budgeting process? Is there a particular aspect of this interconnected process you would change? If so, what is it and why? Dana, you go first.
Hey, thank you. That's a good question. I'm very familiar with the process. Up until the pandemic, when they moved meetings onto Zoom, I attended on my own free time governance and finance meetings and council meetings with no agenda, but to sit in the back, listen and learn and find out what issues, what projects, what concerns are going on in our community that I'm raising my family. I believe communication back and having a voice is big things I'm hearing going door to door. So I believe just current opportunities and others to reach out to council members to hear your voice and current and how to address them during those readings. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Jessia, how familiar are you with the town service review and their operating and capital budgeting processes? Is there anything you change and why?
Well, as somebody that's, that's definitely a subject matter I've had to shore up some knowledge on. But having reviewed them from January, I have a decent understanding of how service reviews feed into budget requirements and, the expectations of service that the town contracts and provides. I think that we could improve the service review process by expanding and asking for the each element of the service review to seek better data collection so that council can make more informed decisions. I think there's a clear case for that to be made within public safety and the RCMP, where we do see things like declining clearance rates and differing expectations in response to what are emerging social issues. So I think we would be able to better respond to budget and service requests if we had more full data.
Thanks, Jessia. And finally, Carrie Lee Schulteis. How familiar are you with the town service review, their operating capital budgeting processes? Is there anything you change about them and why? You're muted there.
Well, I don't think I would change a whole lot. I think that we have quite a transparent service review budgeting process throughout December, where the community can have an option to come and speak with council directly and show their ideas. And we have a budget tracker that will tell us in real time how this is going to impact our budget and how it will impact taxes. So I'm not sure that I would change it that much. I think this year is going to be particularly hard because of the 5-to-1 ratio that we're looking at for taxes and just the economic shortfall that's been experienced during COVID. So I think we're going to have to tighten our belts.
Thanks, Carrie Lee. Moving on to question 6. This one is for Stephanie Ferracuti, Hugh Pettigrew, and Mark Walker. The question is, fiscal restraint is important in any, sorry, I'll try that again. Fiscal restraint is important in any economic environment, and the effects of the pandemic have greatly destabilized the municipal tax base. Please explain how you would ensure the wise use of tax resources as we seek to recover from this crisis. Stephanie.
Thank you for the question, Rob. I think the first thing we could look at, we don't know if we have hit rock bottom yet with the pandemic. And so I think we have to be conscious of that when we are making our decisions. and really separate out what our needs and our nice to haves or wants are. I think we are very fortunate where we live. We have a lot of resources for a small town. We serve a lot of visitors, but I think we do need to make sure that we are very clear when we are going forward the next few years, what is absolutely necessary and what is the best support for our community as widespread as we can make it. If we are going to have minimal dollars that we can spend on social resources, or we don't have money to top up our reserves, then I think we have to make sure that we don't leave any residents behind as we try to go forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hugh Pettigrew, explain how you would ensure the wise use of tax resources as we seek to recover from the pandemic crisis.
So I can tell you a couple of things that I've noticed over the last 4 years, and I've attended mostly, if not all, council meetings relevant to certainly budgets and service reviews and all that good stuff. The elections to me is about economic recovery, and value for money is important. So we need to see better business cases provided to council before we make decisions, whether it's capital programming or not. The other thing we've noticed is we need to curb back some of the capital programs. A lot of them are coming in way over the original budget that was calculated in the 10-year capital plan and beyond. So I want to look at these things in more focus and maybe give up the opportunity of administration to design these things a little earlier with more detail. And then when we get, the devil is in the detail, and we'll get our answer and we'll have more time to prepare for any changes in these costs that usually go up. So that's one of the ways I want to address it. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh.
Yeah,
finally, Mark Walker, please explain how you would ensure the wise use of tax resources as we seek to recover from the pandemic crisis.
Yeah, I think Stephanie and Hugh are on the right track, right? We don't know how much worse this thing could get. Tourism is likely going to be the last or one of the last industries to bounce back, right? As people start going back to work and getting their paychecks, right? They have to save up their money. They have to plan those trips in advance. So we're likely going to see a bit of lag time behind the end of the pandemic and when things really start to recover. I saw something in the paper today that it's estimated we won't see a full 2019 numbers until about 2026. I think we really need to look after our residents and cover the services that are absolutely essential for us to be able to continue living and working here. The capital situation in our town is we're doing okay. We've got some pretty good roads and pipes and services that maybe we can look at pushing some of those projects a little bit further down the road. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Okay, question number 7. This one's going to be for Chip Olber, Kaylee Ram, and Ted Christensen. So starting with Chip, it's been suggested the town of Banff may have some issues with red tape that make it challenging to do business in Banff. Would you agree with this statement? And if so, how would you eliminate unnecessary bureaucracy, including associated costs?
Thanks, Rob. I'm not sure where dealing with red tape statement came from. I know if you come into the town hall that the people at our front counter are fabulously responsive to anyone who's in front of them. You know, I wonder that sometime comes into conversation. I've heard in other communities with the planning department, you know, so perhaps that's where it is. And, you know, planning has timelines in terms of when they have to respond to applicants, and they do their best to respond sooner than those timelines are required. You know, perhaps people find that the delay of going through the Municipal Planning Commission process feels like red tape to them. But again, it's just something that we follow as terms of process and deal with everyone as fairly as we can.
Thank you very much. So Kaylee Ram, does the town of Banff have a red tape problem? If so, how would you work to eliminate unnecessary bureaucracy?
Thanks, Rob. I would echo a lot of what Chip said. I don't know of any red tape per se, and as a business owner, I certainly can say that the operations, once you're in, it's fairly straightforward. The resources that are on the Town of Banff website are extremely thorough. Obviously, having to also have a Parks Canada business license throws a bit of a wrench into the situation, which is unique in comparison to other municipalities. However, we have great resources within the community, depending on if you know where to look. And so I can't speak to any red tape, but definitely a very supportive community for new businesses.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaylee. And finally, Ted Christensen, does the town of Banff have a red tape problem? If so, how would you work to eliminate unnecessary bureaucracy?
Thanks, Rob. I think the red tape problem is a throwback to another level of government that we don't always agree with in this town. And I think that if you look at that, we have to deal with 3 levels of government: federal, provincial, and our own municipal government. That is a navigational problem in its own, but our administration does a very good job of serving the public and in helping to find out the solutions to their questions.
Great, thank you, Ted. Moving on to question 8. This one's going to be for Barb Pelham, Alan Buckingham, and Grant Canning. Starting with you, Barb. What do you feel that is the best way the town of Banff can support the shared aims of a vibrant tourism economy and fulfilled community?
That's a good one. I think this is a question that connects to every single person in town. We have a mono economy. We're all here because we are supporting tourism. I grew up in this town that would transform in the summer times, and now this tourism transformation kind of exists year round throughout our whole seasons. So I think the concept of living where the world visits, if it is a great place to live, it is a great place to visit. I think it's really essential for residents to take time to find space and to find nature, or to breathe really hard and go to the gym. It's important to embrace exactly where we are to continue loving where we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Alan Buckingham, what do you feel is the best way that the town of Banff can support the shared aims of a vibrant tourism economy and a fulfilled community?
For me, I think it's an interesting, what often gets framed as dichotomy between a vibrant community and tourist economy, whereas clearly they're one and the same. The purpose of the town of Banff is to serve the visitors. And I think by serving the visitors, we also end up serving ourselves. I often wish that we didn't put those against each other. I feel like a lot of the stuff that we have in town that maybe, some folks designed it to serve a visitor really helps me a whole lot as well. Like, I really enjoy getting to go to some amazing restaurants, to see some spectacular entertainment. Like, that makes my quality of life as a resident so much better. Some of the services that we have, some might say that we have Rome in order to serve the visitors, but I use it all the time. I think it's fantastic. It's a wonderful way to get around. So I think part of it is just trying to recognize that things that serve visitors serve residents, and things that serve residents also serve visitors.
Thanks, Alan. And Grant Canning, what do you feel the best way the town of Banff can support the shared aims of a vibrant tourism economy and a fulfilled community?
Thanks, Rob. I certainly agree with Barb and Alan, because as a tourism-based economy, it is our only industry in town, and if it didn't exist, we won't have a town. And we know that from our history, from the dates of when the municipality was created. So for me, it really kind of comes down to the balance of the quality of life issues that Alan spoke to, and I think the town definitely has a role to play in that as it relates to dealing with congestion, dealing with sustainable transit and transportation around town. Obviously programming, we always tend to look at sexy things like transit, but there's a lot of programs and things that we do at the town of Banff for our residents that are very supportive, whether it be Finland's programs or supportive of New Canadians, etc. So there is a lot of things that we have to do to support all of our residents. And I think our residents as a whole certainly support our tourism community. So they definitely do go hand in hand.
Thanks, Grant. Moving on to question 9. This one's going to be for Hugh Pettigrew, Jessia Arsenio, and Barb Pelham. Question 9, the town has deployed resources to simulate a range of emergency disaster scenarios for the community to respond to. With what we've learned from the pandemic, do you feel there's a need to focus organizational resources to better mitigate future risks to the community? If so, what are they? Hugh.
Repeat the question, the mitigation to what before you start, sorry.
Yeah, sure. The town has deployed resources to simulate a range of emergency disaster scenarios for the community to respond to. With what we've learned from the pandemic, do you feel there's a need to focus organizational resources to better mitigate future risks to the community?
So the way I see this is we had an excellent DEM team during the pandemic, and you know I've got 10 years as director of emergency services in another community over my tenure. I saw the resources being employed and the discussions at the table sufficient. Obviously, an emergency may not just be COVID. It will certainly be, we're at risk for wildfires, and we're doing a good job there too. Cooperations with Parks Canada and all these other agencies. For me, I think we have a good team. I think we'd like to support them the best way we can to continue down the path. The community discussion always needs to take place, and we'll identify some of these things to having that conversation over the community plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. Moving on now, Jessia Arsenio. Do you feel there's a need to focus organizational resources to better mitigate future risks to the community? If so, what are they?
Yeah, I think if COVID showed us anything, that we really got to prepare for all that we can, especially with respect to emergencies. Alberta sees about 50% of all extreme weather events in Canada, and that's partly why we see, large property insurance hikes with our school board. So I think we need to really take into consideration these risks from a much broader perspective. However, I'm very grateful that we do have extremely capable emergency management staff across the region. I think one thing that we saw earlier last year was a proposal for a regional emergency planner. I think pursuing that would go a long way, ensuring that we have more comprehensive responses as a region. And it might also help us to better leverage community mobilization in response to some disasters, which I think COVID especially has shown is especially valuable. That's me.
Thank you. And finally, Barb Pelham, do you feel there's a need to focus organizational resources to better mitigate future risks to the community? If so, what are they?
Rob, I am very proud of our emergency response teams. I think back over the last years, 2013, we had an incredible flood, and how that was handled. The support that was there, the communications that were in place, how everybody rallied to rise to the occasion, the ongoing fire smarting efforts, working with Parks Canada through that, but also walking the community and engaging and communicating with people within the community. It's been amazing. And I would say our response over COVID, I'm very proud and very grateful for the efforts that have been made. One cannot predict every single crisis that's coming our way. We have foundations in place. They've managed our crises very well, and I'm proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Moving on to question 10. This one's going to be for Kaylee Ram, Dana Humberts, and Leslie Young. So Kaylee, we'll start with you. Sustainability is at the core of why national parks exist and why the town of Banff was created. What is your vision as you think about Banff moving down the path of sustainability? Kaylee.
Thanks, Rob. I'm just so proud of Banff. I mean, we truly are becoming the trailblazer for what other communities strive to in different programming that we put on, from, the zero waste trail and educating, the different commercial sectors and how to properly recycle. Can we always do better from a micro level? Absolutely. We can, definitely educate people more from a community level for, within, maybe more senior housing or from a school level. But overall, I'm so proud of the sustainability. There's great waste management within the compound sector. And I can't wait to see also what we do for public transit to try to minimize traffic as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee. Moving on to Dana Humbert. Sustainability is at the core of why national parks exist and why the town of Banff was created. What's your vision as you think about Banff moving down the path of sustainability?
Hey, thank you. I've heard over the last few weeks issues regarding access to affordable healthy and fresh food in town. I had opportunity 2 times to meet with the Bow Valley Food Alliance and discuss the hurdles and their ideas to build a community around that sustainability. The principles of the Food Alliance align with my vision of Banff and a leader into the environment, social, and economic sustainability. As a councillor, I will continue to support the Food Alliance like the Bow Valley Food Charter. Quick other comment is that a great initiative that the town has a program is the greenhouse program. And I believe that is a great opportunity for all ages should be made available by adding additional greenhouses.
Thank you. And finally, Leslie Young, what's your vision as you think about Banff moving down the path of sustainability?
Sustainability is, I think for me, very hard to define on a very short-term basis. It would be something that would have to be planned for 3, 4, 5 years down the road, which would be nice until something like the COVID pandemic comes along and just shoots holes in everything. It's great to have plans and you can put down a basis for that planning, but one never knows what might come along. And the sustainability part would be, I think, how well do the citizens and the administration of Banff and the whole Bow Valley, including like Louise and Canmore, for instance, how flexible they are in reacting to whatever causes problems to that sustainability. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving on to question number 11. This one's going to be for Sean Rapley, Ted Christensen, and Stephanie Ferracuti. So it's been estimated that the recovery of the tourism economy to pre-COVID levels could be as many as 2 to 3 years away. Although the town's financial ability is constrained as a result of this, how do you foresee the town of Banff playing a supportive role? Sean.
Great, thanks, Rob. There's a number of ways we can be supportive to both the business sector and the community as a whole. Number one, I think we're going to have to continue to leverage the other levels of government for support programs, as we are a one industry town, the most impacted industry in the whole during this whole pandemic. So we need to continue to work with the provincial and federal governments to provide supports for the business sector and for individuals who were affected more so than other industries as we come out of the pandemic. We also need to make sure that we're spending and that we find ways to save money because our tax base is going to shrink, as was spoken to over and over, as well as having to deal with the changing the ratio to 5 to 1. So we're getting double whammy on the tax part, and we need to make sure that we're handling our dollars very carefully. Okay that time?
Thank you, Sean.
Did my mic work?
You were cutting out a little bit there. All right, moving on to Ted Christensen. How do you foresee the town of Banff playing a supportive role in the recovery of tourism to pre-COVID levels?
Well, I think the town of Banff, to be supportive, has to be innovative. We also have to tighten our belts. And I think we have to explore partnerships, public-private, intergovernmental partnerships, in order to share the costs of some of our services and some of our wishes. We've already gone along that route to a degree with hockey academies. We have capital share in our Ped Bridge going across from the gazebo with the Women Nancy Powell Foundation, and we have a whole horizon to explore with our Indigenous neighbors. We can share many initiatives with that community that can bring us a greater wealth in tourism. All of us.
All right, thank you, Ted. And finally, Stephanie Ferracuti, how do you foresee the town of Banff playing a supportive role in the recovery of tourism to pre-COVID levels?
Thanks, Rob. I see one of the biggest roles that the town plays is advocating and helping businesses understand that in order for us to fully recover, we actually also have to bring our staffing levels back. The town of Banff can put in a lot of policies, we can try to put in practices, but if we are not, as employers, paying a living wage in this town, people cannot afford to live here and work. And by not doing that, I don't see a full recovery to those tourism levels being permanent. I think that we have recognized in COVID that people don't want to work and be burnt out and not have an opportunity to actually do the things everyone talks about enjoying here. And that's the best thing we can do, is provide an authentic tourist experience going forward. And by doing that, we need to make sure that the people working are actually enjoying living here. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Question number 12 is going to be for Carrie Lee Schulteis, Grant Canning, and Alan Buckingham. So Carrie Lee, for Banff to become a true leader in climate action, what do you think are the priorities the administration should focus on? You're muted again, Carrie Lee.
I read over the environmental master plan, and I've found it incredible, actually. I learned a lot from it. I think we're looking at all areas of sustainability. Some of the things that the town are doing that I'm delighted with is they're going to solar. And I've looked at other communities, municipalities around the world, and like Australia, for instance, some of their municipalities have 90% solar use. And so I think with the big contributors being energy and, in my opinion, composting that is ending up in the landfill, those two initiatives, I think we've got a definite plan for. The town of Banff is planning for.
Carrie Lee, that's your time. Thank you very much. Grant Canning, for Banff to become a true leader in climate action, what do you think are the priorities administration should focus on?
It starts really, as Carrie Lee just mentioned, with the environmental master plan. We have the plan in place already. We have the roadmap in place already. And this council and previous councils have spent a lot of time mapping that out. And if anyone who hasn't read it, I certainly encourage you to do so, because it is very detailed with very specific goals, very specific timeframes, et cetera. And so as we move into the next 10 years of this strategic plan, I think a lot of those goals will hopefully be implemented. I do think it's worth mentioning as well that environmental goals can be expensive. It can cost a lot of money to do some of the projects that we would like to do, whether it be putting solar panels on buildings or different key things with waste, etc. And they can be expensive. So it will be a priority for council to determine the balance between making sure we accomplish those goals, but also finding the money to pay for it.
Thank you, Grant. Finally, Alan Buckingham, for Banff to become a true leader in climate action, what do you think are the priorities administration should focus on?
For me, there's two real things that we need to be focusing on. And one of those is doing the work, and the other one is bringing people along. We have, as others said, a great environmental master plan. I think we have some great vision there for what we want to do. But we also need to make sure that we're bringing people along and getting other people, everybody in the town, not just the council and administration, to buy in and to really want to work towards these goals. Some of that needs to involve incentivizing people. It's great. I want to do it because I think it's important. I think, I need to make an investment into my future and all of our future. But I think not everybody is necessarily at the same place. As Grant was saying, some of this stuff costs money. And so I think it's the responsibility of us as a municipality to see what incentives we can create for people. We have a solar incentive already. You get a little cash back when you put some solar panels on your house. I think continuing to look at these ideas really will help us push that environmental message forward. And it's so important to make that investment into our future.
Thank you, Alan. Moving on to question 13. This one's going to be for Mark Walker, Kaylee Ram, and Sean Rapley. So Mark, the question is, it is crucial for the town of Banff to continue to invest in affordable housing options to provide for a stable and predictable living situation for every member of our workforce. And progress has been made on this front in recent years. Please explain to me how much further we need to go to achieve a sustainable inventory of housing and how high of a priority this is for you. Mark.
I'm super glad you asked me that question. That's one of the first things on my platform page on my website is housing. When it comes to what our goal should be moving forward, creating a livable town and preparing for the future are kind of the two things we need to balance. And I think housing hits both. Right, we don't have a livable community if we don't have places for people to live. I applaud the efforts of the previous councils in moving programs along like TNU and the Astor in creating housing in a bunch of different ways, right? Rental housing and ownership. I think that needs to continue. We need to make sure that the new units are going to be accessible for people with disabilities or have trouble getting up and down all the stairs we see in these tall units. And I would like to make sure that we get more of these units under the price restricted model in town so that long term they can help affect the rest of the housing sector. I wish I could talk more than a minute on this one. I could keep going. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Kaylee, please explain to me how much further we need to go to achieve a sustainable inventory of housing and how high a priority this is for you.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I mean, housing, it's the utmost importance for our community. It's the #1 topic that gets turned over every single election, and for good reason. When you're reviewing housing in Banff, you know, the primary topic typically is obviously for transient housing and based on that. However, there needs to be a thorough review for obviously aging into housing. So everyone who is, you know, making families, beginning to retire, and then aging afterwards as well. You know, what does that housing look like? Do we have a plethora of options for people to age into housing? And then also we should be reviewing different bylaws and policies that have been put in place to possibly promote, you know, different private sector development as well as lobbying to the provincial government for Banff to be classified as a need for senior housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee. Sean, please explain to me how much further we need to go to achieve a sustainable inventory of housing and how high of a priority this is for you.
It's a high priority, Rob. We've come a long way since my first term on council. I sat on the Housing Corporation in 1995 when we had nothing. We were just starting up the bill, and we were prioritizing the need for housing to keep families in town. And at that time, I always, you know, being a renter and a single frontline worker, the need for rental housing. Now there's been great progress, and council subsequently done a great job in trying to expand it. Now our issue is we have footprint. The footprint's not changing. We have limited access to lands. Housing prices continue to go up and up. Even subsidized housing becomes unreachable. How do we deal with these issues? That's the big question. And how are we going to create more inventory on a limited land base? I mean, obviously density is one answer, but that's not the complete answer. We can't have super dense housing and sort of senior families and the population.
Thank you, Sean. Moving on to our final question of part 1. There's another part to these questions, so everyone stick around after this. But this final question is for Leslie Young, Dana Humbert, and Chip Olver. The question is, a significant number of long-term Bow Valley residents do not have citizenship status in Canada, and some may not be able to obtain it without renouncing citizenship in their country of birth. This group of ineligible voters is nonetheless an incredibly important part of our community and care what happens here. How will you invite guidance from non-citizen locals to ensure their views are represented locally? Leslie.
That is an interesting question, and I can speak to it from a personal basis to some extent. I had 2 older brothers, and if you figure that I've been working here since 1972, my brothers were 10 and 11 years older than me at that time. And one of them joined the American Air Force Cadets because he felt that was the right way to go. He had been in the Canadian Air Cadets and thought there was good opportunities there. And at that time, he was allowed to have dual citizenship. And I think that has passed along to his son. And it's unfortunate that not everybody in town here can take advantage of dual citizenship, but I would certainly encourage them to make their views known on whatever topic they wish to communicate to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana Humbert, how will you invite guidance from non-citizen locals to ensure their views are represented locally?
Thank you for the question. It all comes down to, I've come across this, like probably my other fellow members run in, that door knocking. You come across residents that have been here, others that haven't. They tell you they haven't been here, but it's still hearing their concerns. I still stand there and talk with them, their issues, their concerns, and what's going on in their community. Just having that open relationship is building it for long term. And just, even though they've told you they couldn't vote or they're not a permanent resident, just giving them an opportunity to speak on this election is making them really feel truly welcome in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. And finally, Chip Olver, how will you invite guidance from non-citizen locals to ensure their views are represented locally?
Thank you, Rob. We have a significant portion of our population who may not be citizens. If you look at studies on the town of Banff, English is the first spoken language and Tagalong is the second. So we need to reach out to people through all of our public consultation is open to anyone. You don't have to check a box that says, I'm a voter before you participate in any of the surveys or the focus groups or the information session that the town of Banff has. And then we also offer programs, settlement services and programs for temporary foreign workers. And the staff members who work in those programs can bring those voices back to council and back to other administration also. And just as a point of interest, both those programs are funded from outside agencies. So open for conversations, please participate. You don't have to be a voter.
Thank you, Chip. So that's part one of the council candidates forum. We're going to move on to part two here right now. These are questions that have been submitted in advance by the public. Obviously, the public's very engaged. We have, I think, 339 people currently watching this forum at the moment. So thank you so much for being so engaged in the democratic process here as we head into the big vote on October the 18th. So part two, these questions submitted by the public, there's 7 of them, two to each candidate, and there will be 2 candidates answering each of them. And again, we're going to do 1 minute to respond. So the first one is going to be for Stephanie Farracuti and Mark Walker. The question is, tell me what you know about the town's committee structure. What 1 or 2 committees would you be particularly interested in observing, and why? Would you make any changes to this or other committees? Stephanie.
Thanks, Rob. I don't particularly have a problem with the committee structures at this point. I'm not sure if there's anything in particular this person's thinking of that they'd like changed. The ones that interest me at this point would be things like the library. I'm a huge advocate for the library and the resources that provides. It's a gateway to knowledge for our community. And then as well, I mean, housing is a priority for me. The planning committee, appeals. I mean, anything that's needed. I am actively involved with what this town is doing from my current work with parks. I'm aware of what these committees do, and I feel like I would lend a voice on any of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Moving on now to Mark Walker. What do you know about the town's committee structure? What's 1 or 2 committees that you're particularly interested in observing? Would you make any changes to this or any other committees?
Well, kind of to tie it just back to the last question that you were asking the other 3, one of the ways that people that aren't citizen who are residents of town, they are eligible to serve on boards and committees. So I think that's one thing I've been trying to let people know, that, you know, when they say to me, oh, I can't vote, it's like, yes, but you can be involved. So that's super important to get out there. I'm personally would be very interested in the Banff Housing Corporation board. It's an issue that's very close to my heart and I have a lot of opinions about. And the MPC, or Development Appeals Board, the ones that really get into the meat of the land use bylaws and the you know, the nitty gritty legal elements, and it just appeals to me. I used to referee football when I was a kid growing up, just as a job, and I loved getting into the rules and figuring out what's the correct interpretation. And I think that's a great way to continue to serve the community.
Thank you, Mark. Question number 2 is going to be for Jessia Arsenio and Barb Pelham. Question is, the 2007 community plan articulates that the town of Banff's primary function is to act as a center for visitors to the park and to provide our visitors with accommodation and other goods and services. Why do you feel this is important or not important? Please explain, Jessia.
Well, I believe it's important because it's fairly obvious how our bread is buttered in this community. We are a mono industry town. However, I do think that we should have more critical engagement with that as our primary function. One thing I notice in a lot of land acknowledgements is that historically this land has been a place where people can gather and seek peace and resolution. I think if we're going to have an honest acknowledgement of our need to reconcile with our Indigenous neighbors, we also need to consider that we have higher purposes here. It's not just preserving this place as a UNESCO heritage site, it's preserving it for its inherent value. It's, you know, we do need to make sure that we have more flexibility in that consideration and make sure we seek more holistic solutions to our problems going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessia. Barb, the community plan articulates the town of Banff's function is to act as a center for visitors to the park and provide visitors with accommodation and other goods and services. Why do you feel this is important or not important? Please explain.
I think it's always important to review your goals or your pillars, whether it's for personal purposes, professional, and definitely for community. Yes, we've been a gathering place for 500 generations on this land, and we continue to be. And back to some of the very first dialogues we had tonight. If Banff is a great place to live, it is a great place to visit. And we need to maintain, respect, and protect what is so special about this place. And I believe that collectively we are working towards that through industry, through residential engagement, and through tonight's engagement. So thank you everybody for participating.
Thanks, Barb. Moving on to question number 3. This one is going to be for Alan Buckingham and Ted Christensen. So the question is, sustainability is a guiding principle that informs all decision-making in our destination. Please give me at least one example that you think will help Banff deliver on its vision of environmental, social, and economic health over the next 4 years. What about the next 8 years? Alan.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think, you know, what we're going to do for 4 years and 8 years and 10 and 50 are all super important. Sustainability is about planning for the long term and being able to get there and have a place that we all want to be when we get there. So I think a lot of our initiatives, we talked about before, a lot of the stuff in the environmental master plan. I think the continued installation of solar on the different town buildings is fantastic. I think the way that the town is going about when it's building new buildings, looking at what's the most holistic way we can build this so that we can not just do what we need for this one building, but how can we help our neighbors as well? And it's about looking beyond us that I think we really do sustainability well. It's not just what I can do for me now, it's about what we can do for all of us in the future.
Thank you, Alan. And yes, there we go. Ted, please give me at least one example that you think will help Banff deliver on its vision of environmental, social, and economic health over the next 4 years. What about the next 8 years?
Thanks, Rob. I think what we have to do is we have to maintain our footprint. We have a fixed boundary. That's a special feature of our community. And I think we also have to enter into the discussion of how to manage over tourism. Now, this is something that is a word that incites many concerns, but it's the management of over tourism. That's how we're going to be sustainable, if we manage our visitors' experiences. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Moving on to question number 4. This one is going to be for Chip Olver and Hugh Pettigrew. So Chip, please explain how you would work to improve Banff's economic recovery in 2022 if you are successful in attaining a seat on council.
Thank you. It's a challenge around the world in terms of responding to economic recovery, and especially in tourism communities, because with the tourism spend being one of the people's discretionary spends, it's one of the first things that go. You're going to spend your money on food and shelter and clothing before recreation and tourism. So we need to see in our community things that help invite visitors back. The opening of the borders is one thing that's happening for within our community. You know, if the structure is there for next summer, you know, we could look at downtown, a pedestrian zone again. We can help businesses, as we've did already, by delaying the payment of their property taxes, and we can advocate and lobby on their behalf at other levels of government, like we did at the most recent council meeting.
Thank you, Chip. Hugh, please explain how you would work to improve Banff's economic recovery in 2022 if you are successful in attaining a seat on council.
Well, there's no question that this economic recovery is going to need teamwork, and Team Banff is going to have to be at the table to give us some input. I think the task force that's in place right now, it does involve businesses and the big players, and I think we need to expand that to get there. There's no question that we have to collaborate into our future. Right now is not the time to raise taxes to hurt the same people that are hurting in business, nor the employees that have already depleted their savings accounts or the residents as a whole. I think we need to be very careful how we move forward. This economic recovery is going to need teamwork, and we're going to have to work on solutions that are proven, using proven methods. And we're going to look at our neighbors, but I think for Banff, it's going to be important that we listen to our community and make sure that we address these possible changes in a proper stepped way.
Thank you, Hugh. Question number 5. This one's going to be for Sean Rapley and then Kaylee Ram. So the question is, what actions do you think the town of Banff needs to take to advance the process of truth and reconciliation to rebuild and renew the municipality's relationship with Canada's Indigenous peoples? Sean, you go first.
Difficult question. I mean, it's one our whole country faces and that we struggle with. I think the starting point is always to listen, to find out what the Indigenous peoples are looking for from us. But you know, until we ask those questions and figure that out, I don't think we can be offering solutions. I think it's wrong for us to do that. I think we're better off to acknowledge and let them tell us what they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Our time seems to have disappeared, so I'm just going to see if we can recover that. We are actually a little bit ahead of time here, so we have a minute to work out a little technical kink. If not, I'm going to pull up the timer.
I need to reinstall it, so I will do a manual timer until I get it back in.
Okay, sounds good. I can put up a little timer on my phone too here, a little stopwatch. You see that? There you go. All right, so let's move on here. So Kaylee Ram, what actions do you think the town of Banff needs to take to advance the process of truth and reconciliation to rebuild and renew the municipality's relationship with Canada's Indigenous people? Go ahead, Kaylee.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you for the timer. I believe it's through collaboration, open dialogue, and that's through all facets of the town, whether it's art or any sort of, new development that we're doing for capital projects, whether it's for naming policies, consultations, etc. I think there's multiple different ways in which we can help indigenize these lands, and also to make it a very welcoming place for people when they do come, and visit Banff as an international destination. For someone who does work in the tourism industry, hands-on on the floor, I can tell you from experience that people are so interested genuinely in knowing all of the Canadian history, and to make a safe place also for Indigenous people to meet up and educate new people from across the world about their culture would be fantastic. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee. All right, moving on to the next question. This one is going to be for Carrie Lee Schulteis and Leslie Young. So the question is, how familiar are you with the Municipal Government Act, and what is your comfort level making decisions based on its contents and their legal implications for the town of Banff? Carrie Lee, go ahead. Your mic again.
This is the one area that I didn't do a deep dive on. So I feel unable to answer. So can you ask it to me again?
Oh, sure. Hold on. Let me just stop the timer. So the question is, how familiar are you with the Municipal Government Act? What's your comfort level making decisions based on its contents and their legal implications for the town of Banff?
Well, I guess I'll have to leave it at that. I'm not very familiar with the Municipal Government Act.
Okay,
sadly. But I will be.
Good. Move on to Leslie Young then. How familiar are you with the Municipal Government Act, and what's your comfort level making decisions based on its contents and their legal implications for the town of Banff?
I am going to be alongside Carrie Lee on this one. I have not had a chance to really get into it. I don't have the whole 500 odd pages, I think it is, memorized, but I do, to a certain extent, like reading legal documents like that to try and interpret it to myself into layman's language. And certainly if any references are made to that pertaining to certain decisions or questions, and I'm certainly willing to put in the effort to look at it and see how it pertains to that particular question. Thank you.
Rob, you're muted now.
You're right, I am. Thank you. Looks like we've recovered our timer there. Are we good to go, Melanie?
Yes, we're back in business. Sorry about that.
Fantastic. No worries. No worries. All good. If that's the only technical hiccup we have tonight, I think we're doing pretty good. All right. Okay, this is the final question of the council candidates part. This one's going to Grant Canning and Dana Humbert. So the question is, what would you say is your most substantial weakness in terms of understanding the challenges facing industry, and how do you intend to take steps to improve this? Grant, go ahead.
Sorry, Rob, could you repeat that question again? I just want to make sure I understood it.
Sure. What would you say is your most substantial weakness in terms of understanding the challenges facing industry, and how do you intend on taking steps to improve this?
Sorry, so my greatest weakness or the industry's greatest weakness? Okay.
Your greatest weakness, yeah.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate that. It's a good question. I think for every elected official, the most important thing is to listen and to consult and to talk to people. And I think that's something that we can all be better at. And certainly I'll be the first one to admit I can be better at that as well. And oftentimes it can take people out of their comfort zone and things like that. And so that certainly would be a commitment that I would make, is to do my best to listen to people and to engage with them and do my best to understand their concerns so I can bring that to the council table.
Thank you, Grant. And finally, Dana Humbert, what would you say is your most substantial weakness in terms of understanding the challenges facing industry, and how do you intend on taking steps to improve this?
Thank you, Rob. I would say the biggest weakness would be put in your issues or your general thoughts behind you. As we know, Banff has a huge set of challenges ahead of us. We will need a council that only understands these challenges, but is dedicated and will lead and guide Banff through these challenges. At the end of the day, it's not about me or how I feel about this project, this document, or policy. As a council member, you're obligated to be open-minded on everything that comes across your desk. I will ask well-informed questions, listen to your voices, and at that time, make the decision for our community and town as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Well, we again are ahead of time. We have reached the end of the council candidates forum. The mayoral forum and debate will start at 7 o'clock tonight. So there is a lot of information available about where people can find out more details on all the candidates. I believe we're going to be throwing that up on the screen here momentarily. But I just want to say a huge thank you to every single person. I mean, I see all these faces on the screen tonight. It's just so amazing, the level of engagement in municipal democracy and the amount of passion that everyone is giving here tonight. Some really strong answers, some really strong candidates. Thank you so much for participating in this democratic process. So there we go. The contact information for everybody running for mayor and council is now up on the screen. If you want to find out more detailed information on websites, Facebook, you can go to the Town of Banff website at banff.ca, and that's where you can also find some links there on the Meet the Candidates page. You can also go to the Where to Vote page and find out information on where to vote, including tomorrow from 3 to 7 o'clock and Friday from 10 to 2. That's advanced voting at Banff Town Hall. And of course, the main election date is coming up on Monday, and that'll be from 10 to 8 o'clock at the Banff Park Lodge. For everyone who's participating and watching this debate tonight or this forum tonight, I hope you took something away from this, maybe help make your decision a little bit easier. The forum has been recorded, and the link of this will be sent to you. So if you missed any of it or you want to watch any of it again, you'll have the opportunity to do so. It'll also be posted on social media platforms. A big thanks again to our sponsors, Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association, Rocky Mountain Outlook. Again, we will start the mayoral forum and debate at 7 o'clock. So we're going to take a quick break right now. And stay tuned. Thanks, everyone.
Just a question for Melanie. If we're going to stay and observe the mayoral part, we just stay in this room just like they did?
Mark, it's Wanda here. She may have stepped away from the computer, so we'll just ask her again.
Okay, no worries. I'll just turn my camera off and mute, and I'm assuming I'll just stay and watch the second part.
That sounds great. I'll send her a note through chat and we'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick heads up that this is your 5-minute warning, 5-minute warning for all the mayoral candidates, as well as all the people watching at home.
For the mayoral candidates, maybe we could do a quick sound check before we get started, Rob.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Rob, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good, Brian.
Thank you.
Hi, Rob, it's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Do I sound okay?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Just a reminder, we are still live with everyone here. Just a heads up about that.
Thank you.
Is Corey there at the moment? Oh, we still got a few minutes.
She's signed in, but she may have stepped away. Oh, there she is. Do a sound check, Corey.
Hello, everyone.
Great, can hear you just fine. All right, this is your 1-minute warning, everybody. We're gonna get started in about 1 minute here.
I had this.
All right, it is exactly 7 o'clock. So let's keep things rolling along. Welcome back, everyone watching at home. Thank you for joining us for tonight's very important candidates forum and mayoral debate brought to you by the Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association. sponsored by the Rocky Mountain Outlook. We've heard from all the council candidates, and we're going to hear from the mayoral ones. First of all, once again, it is important to acknowledge where we are, the town of Banff, located on the traditional lands of Treaty 7 territory, comprised of the Stoney Nakoda nations of Wesley, Chiniki, and Bearspaw, 3 nations of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika, and the Tsuut'ina of the Dene people. An acknowledgement of Treaty 7 region is a commitment to thinking about the past and what our relationship to Indigenous peoples means to us today. So we have 3 of the 4 candidates running for mayor in attendance this evening. And because we are missing a 4th, we're going to change up the timing somewhat, although the structure that we discussed at the beginning is going to remain the same. So the format will be as follows. The mayoral candidates will each have 2 minutes to give a bit of an introduction to themselves, and we'll do that in reverse alphabetical order. That'll be Karen, then Brian, and then Corey. Then we have 4 questions total that are structured and put forward by the Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association. We're going to give you now 90 seconds, so a minute and a half, to respond to each question, and we'll do that in a mixed order. Every mayoral candidate will get a chance to answer each of the 4 questions. And then we're going to move on to a mayoral debate. We're going to give this a go. So basically, there'll be 3 topics. Each candidate will individually have a minute and a half to respond. And then we're going to open the floor to 3 minutes for general debate. And how this is going to work is I'm going to ask mayoral candidates, if they'd like to participate in this part, to raise your hand. I will acknowledge you when I see your hand up. If you'd like to add something or interject, please raise your hand, and I will acknowledge you when you have an opportunity to speak, and I'll try to share time so that everyone gets an equal opportunity to speak and nobody's sort of monopolizing those 3 minutes there. If that all makes sense, again, I'll ask the mayoral candidates to keep their cameras on. We do still have some council candidates in attendance watching. I'll ask you to keep your cameras off and your mics muted for this portion. So let's get started with opening remarks. 2 minutes each in reverse alphabetical order. I would like to invite Karen Thomas to start. Karen, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Good evening, respected residents. Rob, Murray, thank you for hosting this. BLLHA, you're providing the venue and way that we can communicate to the residents by hosting this forum, and I'd like to especially thank Darren and Melanie for their hard work. And most of all, my fellow candidates, Councillor Standish, Mayor Dumano, thank you. Tonight we celebrate democracy, your right to choose who is going to lead this incredible town of ours. Banff is a paradise. We are entrusted with its protection. We work with parks. We provide service. When somebody becomes mayor, they represent you on every level. All the levels of government. The residents, we represent the residents of Banff. We represent the commercial aspect of Banff. We must speak from a team perspective. I bring professional listening skills, communication skills, and team building skills. I know I'm the dark horse here. You don't know me the same way you know Brian and Corey. They've served on council, and you wonder, who is this woman that's running against these people that are so well known? I came to the Valley in '84, and I worked at the lake, teaching skiing and doing some volunteer patrolling. And after that, I was a physical therapist at that time. I'd been practicing about 15 years and working in hospitals and various clinics. And
unfortunately, Karen, that is your time. That's 2 minutes. We will move on now to our next mayoral candidate. Please welcome Brian Standish.
Thank you, Rob. Let me jump right in with my vision of Banff. I envision Banff as a model environmental community where with our partners, we can continue to create a sense of place through a balance of sustainable development and tourism. And therefore, my platform is based on 4 key areas: economic recovery, environmental awareness, sustainable transportation, and community well-being. The past 18 months has taught us that there are no playbooks on how to govern a town during a pandemic. I'm committed to leading us out of this pandemic and the economic fallout that has occurred because of it. And therefore, it is imperative that we support our tourism industry through the recovery. There are no textbooks on how to strike a balance between the environmental pressures of living in a national park and the pressures of a community that is striving to be self-sufficient, provide quality jobs, and a comfortable standard of living for our residents. There's no question in my mind that Banff is the best place to live, raise a family, start a business, or age in place. My leadership will balance the needs of our residents with the expectations of our visitors. Banff has a unique set of challenges ahead of us. Therefore, it is critical that we have a mayor that not only understands these challenges, but is dedicated to meeting those challenges head on. Banff needs a mayor that not only recognizes the fact that we are unique, but also has the courage, vision, and leadership to guide Banff into the future. I got into politics to do something, not to be something. I believe in delivering results and living the values of hard work, integrity, trust, honesty, loyalty, and collaboration. In closing, I'd like to reiterate the fact that the town of Banff needs solid leadership moving forward. I believe I have the qualities to help lead Banff over the next 4 years. Experience, dedication, leadership, and conviction. I thank you for your trust and confidence. We are on a very bright journey ahead. Let's do this together.
Thank you, Brian. And finally, please welcome Corey DeMano.
Hi, Rob. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And thank you for hosting this forum and debate tonight. And also would just like to thank the council candidates. It's not easy to be in the hot seat for an hour and a half, and for my fellow candidates here tonight. So I'm Corey DeMano, and I've had the honor of serving as a councillor for 8 years, and recently as the mayor since I was appointed in August by my fellow councillors. Often I feel like I live between 2 worlds in Banff. I don't own a home, I don't own a car by choice, and I often have 3 jobs on the go. I believe that this dichotomy, because I also am a decision maker and a leader in our community. So this is what enables me to understand the livability challenges that our residents have when deciding to make Banff their home. A strong voice for addressing affordability, housing, and environmental challenges, I'm proud of the work that I've been a part of on council. A major focus of this new council will be on vigilant fiscal management and recovery. I know Banff can rise to the challenge of building back our tourism economy while balancing a healthy community and a protected environment. We will need to be innovative and open to new opportunities. And as mayor, I will steward relationships with provincial and federal governments to ensure it's a collaborative effort. My vision for Banff continues to be progressive, and I have the leadership skills, experience, and tenacity to guide us into the next 4 years. I'm open-minded, I'm respectful, I'm curious, and I'm an active listener. I will ensure everyone has a voice at the council table and within the community. I'm excited by the change that is coming to council. And as mayor, I will welcome the diversity of opinions and strive to work collaboratively to make decisions with data, public feedback, and information. They say to never make campaign promises, but here's mine. I promise I love Banff as much as you do, and I promise I will work hard to make.
Thanks, Corey. Right on. Karen, you have a question? You're still muted there.
There's a bit of a technical issue, at least for me, in that I can't see the timer. So it's very hard to decide exactly what to do there. So can that be corrected in any way, please?
Are you on a,
Melanie,
sorry, go on, Melanie.
You need to scroll through the screens until you see the timer, or you can go to gallery view.
I can do that, but then what happens, I'm on gallery view, but I see Chip Oliver's face. And if I
Yeah,
go to the timer, there's nobody there. Then I'm not there, Brian's
Yeah.
not there,
So-
Corey's not
So
there.
Karen, you can
Yes.
pin a timer by right clicking on it. Those three little dots at the top of the screen, you
Okay.
can pin, and that should show up at the top of your screen when you do that.
All right. Let's move on. Again, a big thanks to all 328 people currently watching. It's been a really active forum so far. We do have a series of structured questions that have been prepared in advance by the Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association. Just a reminder to everyone that we have disabled the chat and Q&A functions for audience members this evening. However, I've had one-on-one conversations with everybody here tonight, and I know that they're all super open to emails or phone calls or whatever. So if there's something you need to know more information about, I'm sure they'd be really happy to chat with you after the forum. But hopefully you'll have some of your questions answered tonight by what we put forward. So what we're gonna do is give all candidates 90 seconds or a minute and a half to respond to each of these 4 questions, and we're going to switch up the order. So this first question is going to go to Brian first, then Corey, then Karen. So the question is, changes to the 2015 Municipal Government Act required municipalities to align to a 5-to-1 tax split. Banff remains non-conforming to this requirement. This exposes the town to unmitigated financial risk, which has not been accounted for in either the town's annual financial plan or business planning process. What steps would you take to ensure Banff is in conformance with these provincial requirements? Brian.
Thanks, Rob. There's no question that we do have to come in conformance with the Municipal Government Act in a 5-to-1 ratio. The good news is that we have a 5-year grace period to do that. In that 5 years, I believe that we can do it. The whole basis behind a 5-to-1 split is that it gives us flexibility on how to handle our tax split. Right now, in fact, of the last 31 years, the town of Banff has only had to go above the 5-to-1 8 times in our history. So it's a very unusual thing for us, but definitely this year was the highest we've had to go to, 6.31, I believe. So it's not unusual, but it is. So I have the utmost confidence in council and administration that we can meet that 5-to-1 going forward, but it will be extremely difficult over the next 2 to 3 years.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on now to Corey. Again, the question is, what steps would you take to ensure Banff is in conformance with the 5-to-1 tax split provincial requirements?
Thanks, Rob. So historically, the financial plan, which council adopts every year, has said that we stay between a 4-to-1 to 6-to-1 split. And so we have been within these boundaries typically. And, of course, with the pandemic, with a economic constriction like we've never seen before in our community, we went outside of these boundaries. And as was stated during the earlier forum with the council candidates, this is legislated by the MGA. And so we were waiting on Parks Canada to agree with those amendments that were made in 2015. And now that they have, we will have to begin to align ourselves with the MGA. We've also heard we do have a phase-in approach to this. And, I would say that typically this is not as challenging in a normal year, but because of the pandemic, it will be, quite the challenge to move to this. And so I think in the meantime, we need to show fiscal restraint. We need to look at a redirection of revenues to protect our residential taxpayers. And I think we need to be open to new ideas and to bring everyone to the table to make this a collaborative effort so that it's a success. So that could be industry, that's community, and really we're going to work on this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. And finally, Karen, what steps would you take to ensure Banff is in conformance with the 5-to-1 tax split provincial requirement?
Thank you, Rob. Obviously, we have to look at all the books, review the fiscal plan that's in place, and see how the decreased revenues that the commercial tax base will bring in. And also, it's just the strangest time, but fiscal restraint review, and quite likely putting holds on capital projects so that we continue to provide the services we need, outlining those and really attending in great detail to what the requirements of the residents are and what the gravy is and what is necessity. And that, balancing those, getting the 5-to-1 split. I mean, it's just tax revenues are going to decrease, from the commercial sector. And if they're supposed to be 5-to-1, if you look at that actual 5-to-1 basis, it means that if you get 1/5 of your tax from the resident, then their rates have to decrease too. At least, perhaps it takes big review. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Moving on to question 2, we'll kind of keep the same order, just putting the next person first. So we'll do Corey, then Karen, then Brian. So Corey, the question is, how would you navigate a concern with an ethically misaligned member of council whom you feel needs to be held accountable? What would be your first course of action as the lead elected official? Corey.
Thank you, Rob. So as those watching, it sounds like we have quite the audience. Thank you. Council has adopted a code of conduct, and that's a new code of conduct for us. And during this last term, we did have to look at code of conduct complaints a couple of times. So I'm now well practiced in this. And so, we would go through the following procedures that are laid out in this code of conduct. So administration receives it, and then it goes from there to council. And we did recently have a delegation that spoke to potentially having an ethics commissioner, and so council has committed to looking at a few different options, an ethics commission, as well as having it looked at just independently of council. So there's a few different options on the table that we'll be looking at when we review this code of conduct. But at a high level, I would say that we all need to work with integrity and with respect for one another. And as mayor, I would really foster a culture of working with a high ethical standard on council. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Moving on now to Karen. How would you navigate a concern with an ethically misaligned member of council whom you feel needs to be held accountable? And what would be your first course of action as the lead elected official? You're on mute there, Karen.
Hi, Rob. Again, coming from a business background and dealing with situations like this from a professional point of view, it is something that one deals with from time to time. It's never pleasant. You have to be direct. The first thing is when somebody comes with a complaint, you have to make sure that the person that the complaint is against understands where it's coming from. And that's a confidential one-on-one conversation as mayor that you would have with that person and see what they have to say. And then, of course, you have to go through the process. Everybody has to take a code of conduct when they take their oath of office and understand it. So, people want to do the right thing. Sometimes it's a very unintentional situation. You deal with it. And if if it gets escalated, if it needs to, then you go through the processes. And obviously my preference would be to be able to take it to the provincial ombudsman.
Thank you, Karen. And finally, Brian, how would you navigate a concern with an ethically misaligned member of council whom you feel needs to be held accountable? And what would be your first course of action as the lead elected official?
Thanks, Rob. As Corey mentioned, we've recently instated a code of conduct. So as the lead person on council, it would be my job to I would be contacted by administration, I'm assuming, and we would present this to council, have an in-camera session, discuss it, have thorough conversation. A lot of the things that happen in camera, unfortunately, have to stay in camera due to privacy concerns, but certainly it would be dealt with through a code of conduct policy, which we have in place. And as Corey also mentioned, there's talk of having an ethics commission. But yes, it would be dealt with quickly and correctly.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on now to question 3. So for this one, we'll start with Karen and then go on to Brian and then finally Corey. So the question is, there may be times in the role as mayor when the town's interests are at odds with that of Parks Canada's. How do you seek to gain clarification in such instances? More specifically, what would your approach be? To work through local representatives, federal representatives in Ottawa, or both? Please explain. You're muted again there, Karen.
Being at odds with Parks Canada is not something that I would look forward to. They're our landlord, and ultimately they have the big stick, and they should, because we are stewards of the park. We are in service here, and they gave us the certain rights with the incorporation document, and we have to work with them. So my first course of action, of course, would be to try to define what exactly the problem is and see if we could come to some terms and understanding and go through the levels necessary to do that. So whether that be with Mr. McDonough, or the federal minister responsible for Parks Canada and the environment. And I look forward to those opportunities to talk to these people and get to know how we can work together in the best way possible. I think we have common goals. Everybody is here because we love the park. We want to maintain it. We want to be stewards of it. We want to be here for future generations. That's what it's all about. We are stewards. We have to protect our environment and the place that we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Moving on now to Brian. Again, there may be times in the role as mayor when the town's interests are at odds with that of Parks Canada. How do you seek to gain clarification in such instances, and what would your approach be, who to work with and that sort of thing?
Thanks, Rob. The first place I would go to would be meeting with the park superintendent at the Intergovernmental Liaison Committee. It's a committee that's made up of mayor and Mr. McDonough. That would be the first place you would go. Following that, if things didn't work out, you'd step up the ladder and probably take it to the federal level, to the minister responsible for Parks Canada. But I have the utmost confidence that I could work things out with Mr. McDonough. I've known Mr. McDonough for quite some time. Certainly lines of communication would be open, and there would be a reason to come to a common understanding through communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And finally, Corey, there may be times in the role as mayor when the town's interests are at odds with that of Parks Canada. How do you seek to gain clarification in such instances, and what would your approach be as far as who you'd be working with, that sort of thing?
Thanks, Rob. It's probably going to be hard to fill a minute and a half with really good answers that have already been said. But I would just reiterate that the mayor sits on the Intergovernmental Liaison Committee, and that's an opportunity to raise things to the superintendent at that time between the town of Banff and Parks Canada. And, I guess I would just say that I pride myself on having really good working relationships with folks. And, I could see myself carrying that on with our friends at Parks Canada, because the town of Banff is facing many challenges. Recovery, we have ambitious targets when it comes to environment, and it's really important that we're aligned with our partners, especially Parks Canada. And so, I think another good opportunity just for value alignment is our Banff Community Plan, which is coming up. And of course, Parks Canada has signed off on that plan. And so I think it's yeah, a good opportunity to just be on the same page so that some of these clarification issues may not even arise. So thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Our final structured question, we're going to do this to Brian, Corey, and then Karen. Okay, so the question is, Banff relies on one economic driver, tourism. And one of the challenges, as noted by the former mayor, is that Banff flushes toilets for 25,000 people a day on a tax base of 8,200. As mayor, how would you address this shortfall in funding to deliver sustainable services to the residents of our community? Brian.
Thanks, Rob. I think the first thing we have to take into account is that it's not just a municipal responsibility, it requires all levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal. We're all in this together. Banff is a huge economic driver for the provincial government as well as the federal government in terms of tourism dollars. Billions of dollars are raised within the town, so it's certainly in their best interests for us to sit down at the table and work things out. We do spend a lot of money servicing our visiting sector, but the aspect of oh, I've lost my train of thought. But the important thing to remember is that we need another source of income, and we need to be working in partnership with other levels of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on now to Corey. Corey, again, the question, Banff relies on one economic driver, tourism. One of the challenges is the lack of sustainable funding for the tourist population. As mayor, how would you address this shortfall in funding to deliver sustainable services to the residents of the community?
Thanks, Rob. So I think the undertone there is what we heard earlier during the council forum, and that is resort municipality status. And I just want to talk about that for a minute. So this has been worked on since 2008, and it's been hard to, let's say, achieve that title because of changes in government, ministers change, premiers change. But I will say that clearly our message has been heard that Banff is a unique community, and because of the economic benefits that we provide the rest of the province has in turn acknowledged that. And so one example is the $10 million tourism component of the municipal operating support transfer during COVID. There was only 3 communities that received a portion of this, and Banff received $4.7 million. And this was in recognition of our tourism community and the impacts that COVID had on tourism. So to me, that's a huge win. And then a second example is TNU. So those are our affordable rental units, and we worked with the province to make those happen. And so, you know, the province is listening and they're helping us when we can make the case for it. So maybe it's not this title of resort municipality status, but they are recognizing the unique nature of our community. And of course, the shining example as well is transit. We would not have been able to grow Rome public transit as much as we have without the support of the provincial government.
Thank you, Corey. And finally, Karen, Banff relies on one economic driver, tourism, and one of the challenges noted by the former mayor is that Banff flushes toilets for 25,000 people a day on a tax base of 8,200. As mayor, how would you address this shortfall in funding to deliver sustainable services to the residents of our community?
I'm glad you asked this question, Rob, because our councils have been working on this for 13 years. It's seen 2 mayors and, 4 different councils, and the first one was a little bit less time. But this is not a new concept. They've been working hard on this, and it is going to come to fruition. The thing is, I think what we need to do in order to make it happen is we need to review all the documentation that's gone before. We need to develop a new strategy to make the governments realize how critical we are to the whole tourism industry, not just in Alberta, but across Canada. When I've traveled anywhere in the world, People know where Banff are. We are the #1 reason people to come to Canada. There's no one who wants to come here without seeing Banff. So you take that and you extrapolate that into dollars, into the rest of Canada, and into our province and into all the other tourist municipalities. We're #1. We should be getting the most dollars, and we have to go for it. So I'll work with anybody to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So that is part one, the structured questions. Part two, we're going to move on to the mayoral debate. So just a reminder how this is going to work. So there'll be 3 questions, and for each question, everyone will get 90 seconds to just sort of present their thoughts on that one at a time. And then after that, we're going to move into sort of a more debate style where people can raise their hands. I will acknowledge you. You can talk. If somebody else raises their hand in the middle, I will try to acknowledge you as well. And we'll hopefully get some sort of conversation going between the 3 of you here. But again, the first part is just 90 seconds. And it's sort of your allotted time there. We're going to switch up the order a little bit. We're going to do Karen first, then Corey, then Brian for this first question. So Karen, can you share what experience you have as a leader to navigate intergovernmental relations and tackle issues that involve provincial and/or federal policy?
Rob, I'm a professional listener. I have sat on the college board for my professional association, and I've represented my colleagues at that level. I know how to work on a board. I can do that anywhere. I communicate I can talk to anybody. I can speak to any situation. I prepare well. And my experience, I have 29 years of business experience working with primarily with people who come with problems that I have to listen to and figure out how to help them. So I listen well, I collaborate well, I'm a motivator, and I build teams. So it's all about taking all of those skills and working together to make something really positive happen at a higher level, at intergovernmental levels. When I'm elected, I'll be reaching out to Miranda Rosen day after to set up a meeting and talk about this resort status. That's the first step. And, there's many steps after that. I realize it's going to take a lot of work. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Moving on, Corey, can you share what experience you have as a leader to navigate intergovernmental relations and tackle issues that involve provincial and/or federal policy?
Thank you. Well, I would reiterate that I've been on council for 8 years. And so in this time, we've had meetings with our local MLA and our local MP, and certainly with our partners at Parks Canada. So this is something that I have experience in. And in my role as mayor, I've also had meetings with the superintendent and most recently meetings with the Privy Council office. And so I look forward to representing Banff to these folks, because I pride myself on being accessible and ready to collaborate to solve Banff's challenges. I'd also say that I learned from the best, and the best taught me that you walk into the room, you find the person who's got the most power, you get in line to talk to them, you give them your card, you give their staff your card, and you build networks that way, you build relationships, and that's what I would bring to this role.
Thank you, Corey. And finally, Brian, can you share what experience you have as leader to navigate intergovernmental relations and tackle issues that involve provincial and/or federal policy?
Thanks, Rob. I'll start with my 11 years on council. I've been able to, through council, meet our MLA, our MP. We've had discussions in council setting, so I'm familiar with the players, but I've also got experience as chair of the Bow Valley Regional Transit Services Commission, and that's allowed me to deal with provincial ministers in dealing with green trip funding for Rome. So I'm very comfortable meeting with the powers that be in order to get what's best for the town of Banff. As mayor, I would take great pride in being a good listener, a team player, and certainly an advocate for the town of Banff. I look forward to the challenge, and I look forward to the challenge, and it would be very, very exciting.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so we're going to sort of go to the more debate style on this topic here. So the subject, of course, is intergovernmental relations and issues that involve provincial or federal matters as well. If anyone wants to start, feel free to raise your hand. If anyone has any thoughts that they'd like to start with. Don't all put up your hands at once. Karen, why don't you start? And if anybody wants to interject, so they can go right ahead and raise their hand, and I'll acknowledge you. Okay, go ahead, Karen. Sorry. You're muted there.
Intergovernmental relations. What does that mean? That means being able to collaborate and talk with various people at all different levels. Okay, you're going to have a path that is because you're mayor of Banff. And so using that tool, it's important to make those appointments and conversations happen. Your big stick is that you've got an idea that you've researched and a plan. You're going to present your ideas. So when you get a chance to talk to somebody, you want to take a message there. You listen to what they have to say, and then you think on your feet as they ask you questions. If you can't be reading off of your notes, you've got to be totally prepared.
Brian, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I honestly believe that now's not the time to be electing a mayor with no political experience. Unfortunately, Ms. Thomas doesn't have political experience, and I believe the residents of Banff should trust me to make important decisions concerning the town's future, because I do bring experience, integrity, and honesty. I will provide responsive leadership by being a leader who listens. Leadership is the key.
Karen, go ahead.
I'm a proven leader. I led a business, started it, developed it for 29 years, owned and operated, and then sold it to somebody who continues that business and has the same number of employees. That's a successful leader. At one time, I had 30 employees because I had another clinic in Canmore, which I sold to another employee after 8 years, trying to size down so I could be more with my family. So leading, I know all about leading. Thank you, Brian.
Corey, did you have your hand up there? Yeah.
Yes, I just feel left out, but it's a tough subject to debate because, I feel like each have had their perspective on what they would bring to the table. So I would just reiterate that I'm all about collaboration and putting Banff's needs in front of folks who can help us solve our challenges. And I would work hard every day to put Banff's challenges in front of the folks that can help us find solutions.
Okay, great. I think that's just about time here. So thanks very much. Question number 2, which everyone will have 90 seconds to respond to, followed by a 3-minute of general debate. So we're going to do this with Corey to start, followed by Brian, and then Karen. So Corey, the mayor's position is one that represents Banff to the world. Can you explain what experience you have that would equip you to be the municipality's head spokesperson on important local issues that also have a global lens? Corey.
Thanks, Rob. So I have a degree in journalism and I worked as a reporter, and I have work experience as a lead communicator. And so I am very confident in my ability to write well and to communicate well. I'm comfortable with media. I've worked with media in the past, and I have good working relationships with local media as well. So I'm confident that when Banff is at the front of these provincial and national stories, that I can represent Banff well. In fact, as deputy mayor and mayor, I've had to do this on a couple of occasions. I spoke whenever we had cannabis legislation. I was on the news, and as well as masks, both as deputy mayor and in this role as mayor. And I would say that I spoke very effectively on both subjects and was able to represent Banff in a very positive and informed way.
Thank you, Corey. Moving on now to Brian. Again, the mayor's position is one that represents Banff to the world. Can you explain what experience you have that would equip you to be the municipality's head spokesperson on important local issues that also have a global lens?
Certainly, Rob. I think it dates back to towns incorporation. I've been on boards and committees since the town was incorporated. I've also spent 11 years on council. I've been a spokesperson for not only Bow Valley Regional Transit Services Commission, but I've also been deputy mayor and had to speak in public. It's something I really look forward to. Well, I'll tell you a story. I was on the debating team back in high school, which was very rewarding. And so I certainly cherish the idea of public speaking. And you're right, Banff is a showcase for the world, and you would be speaking to the world on various subjects regarding the town. So I have no problem standing in front of a camera, a microphone, and delivering my message to the world.
All right, great. And finally, Karen Thomas, the mayor's position is one that represents Banff to the world. Can you explain what experience you have that will equip you to be the municipality's head spokesperson on important local issues that also have a global lens?
Rob, when you are representing Banff to the world, I think it's a great asset to have traveled the world, and I have. I've been behind the Iron Curtain. I've been behind the Berlin Wall before it was knocked down. I've traveled extensively in Europe. I lived there for 3.5 years. I worked as a physiotherapist and a ski instructor, and I worked in the hospitality industry, serving and cleaning. So that was a long time ago. Recently, my husband and I sailed our boat to New Zealand via the Pacific Islands, the two of us alone on a sailboat, a 46-foot sailboat. We reached many countries. We saw many things. I've been to Australia, I've been to New Zealand, I've been many places. And I think when you've seen as much as I have, you can relate to people from everywhere. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to, you find something in common, whether it's the art from that country, whether it's the cultural history. There's so many ways that I can represent Banff well from that experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So we're going to open the floor up to sort of 3 minutes of conversation around, I guess, the subject of, really Banff being under the global lens, and, you'd be stepping into the role of a spokesperson. The spotlight would really be on you, and what makes you well equipped to doing that job. Does anyone want to start? Corey, go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. Something I didn't mention earlier is, it's a real understanding of the issues, and to be able to articulate what's going on, you have to understand what's happening. And so I pride myself on doing my homework and being well researched and being able to then articulate in plain language what's happening. And I'd also say, this requires a good working relationship with the communications director. He's or she, it depends on who, but currently it's a he. They've got the expertise to help guide you through this. And so, I would continue to have a good working relationship with them. And I also, like I said earlier, have been in media and I have worked with media. So I know what they're looking for when it comes to a story and an angle. And I feel that I have a compelling presence and look forward to representing Banff on those world stages.
Brian, did you have your hand up earlier? Did you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I was just going to mention a couple of things. I love to travel as much as the next person, but I don't know if sailing the 7 seas really qualifies you to be a spokesperson for the town of Banff. But just getting back to Corey's point, our communications director is definitely a key to presenting notes for media presentations, and that working relationship is incredibly important. Corey, yes, does have a communications degree, but to Karen's point, world experience and knowledge does carry you so far. So yes, it would be more than just a degree that would be beneficial for you.
Erin, go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. And we're all sort of sitting here knowing that we're trying to get points with the people who are watching. We all have certain skills. Some of us are better at some things, some of us are better at the other things. But what they really want is they want somebody who can speak, has some life experience, many aspects of life that they can take and discuss with people who are going to be making decisions and perhaps sending their country folk to see us, promoting our country, promoting Banff within their country. We need to work with other tourism agencies in places like Thailand. We need to talk about how age-friendly Banff will make a huge difference to our tourism process. Age-friendly Banff hasn't been discussed yet, and it needs to be because it's going to be a huge economic player.
Can you say something in 7 seconds, Brian?
My previous experience was as a international sales manager at Brewster Tour, so I'm familiar with different countries' aspects.
Awesome. Okay, 3 minutes is up. Thank you so much for that conversation, everyone. We are going to move on to the final question for tonight's forum/debate. So we're going to start with Brian on this one, then move to Karen, and then finally Corey. So the question is, as evidenced through the pandemic crisis, the mayor must make difficult decisions that are often under intense observation. At times, not all stakeholder groups or members of the public will support these decisions. Please explain how you would defend your decisions under this level of scrutiny. Brian.
Well, it's not just related to being the mayor, it's related to being in politics. The first thing you learn is that you're not going to make everybody happy. It's important to gather your information and make the best decision on the information you have available. Some people won't agree with you, but you have to be confident in yourself that you've dissected the information and that it makes sense, and that your decision is in the best interest of the community. And I certainly believe that present council made the correct decisions during this last wave of the pandemic, and I will stand by that with no problem whatsoever.
Thanks, Brian. Moving on to Karen, the mayor must make difficult decisions that are often under intense observation. Not all stakeholder groups or members of the public will always support these decisions. Please explain how you would defend your decisions under this level of scrutiny.
Okay, so let's talk about the the last wave of the pandemic and what has happened and how it was dealt with. It was such a difficult decision, and I agree, it wasn't easy. There were 80 letters written to council about concerns. It was a difficult decision, but I can tell you that people felt that they weren't heard. And that unfortunate situation happens over and over again. There's a disconnect in communication. If they felt they made the right decision, they didn't tell them why they felt they made the right decision. So, I can sit here and talk about why I disagree with the decision that was made. I don't think that's the issue here. The issue is, how do you lead? Do you do something just because the government did it? And we could have led and showed an example by wearing masks and putting it on the billboard out of town. Please wear a mask when you come in. You will be welcomed if you have a mask on. It would have been an easy thing to do. It would have set us up as a leader within Canada. We needed it so badly. Banff is a #1 destination, and I believe the rest of the province would have followed us. Calgary certainly wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And finally, Corey, the mayor must make difficult decisions that are often under intense observation. At times, not all stakeholder groups or members of the public will support them. Please explain how you would defend your decisions under this level of scrutiny.
So my experience in the last 8 years has been listening to folks and educating them on at least where I'm coming from. And at the end of the day, you may agree to disagree, and that's totally fine. That's healthy, and that's going to happen. And I think the key point is that we're communicating. And so this is a lesson learned. I am hearing on the campaign trail that council could have done better with communicating directly with businesses and residents during the pandemic. And, you try your best, sometimes you miss the mark. And I am taking that feedback to heart and would put that into practice if elected as mayor. Just to speak briefly on the pandemic, which I don't know if there's such a thing as speaking briefly on it, but that was a very challenging time as an elected official. And I don't think any of us could have ever imagined having to make those types of decisions. Information was changing daily, sometimes hourly. And we would sit and deliberate these discussions for hours at a time, only to have the province potentially come in shortly after to mandate something, regardless of the decision we had made. And these issues were quite polarizing in the community. We often heard we weren't doing enough. We often heard we were doing too much. We were going too far. And those were meetings that were tough and ones that you left feeling that you hoped and prayed that you made the right decisions for the health and safety of your community. And it was just extremely challenging.
Thank you, Corey. So we're going to open up the debate portion. I mean, there's a lot of different places we could go with this if you want. I mean, we could talk about pandemic response. We could talk about divisive issues. We could talk about communicating decisions to the public. Brian, you had your hand up first there if you wanted to lead us off.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. I was just going to say, start off by saying that leadership is really basing your decisions on fact. And when all the answers aren't known, you rely on advice and actions of experts. And so my decision to not support a masking bylaw in Banff was based on my trust in our Chief Medical Officer of Health. Further to that, since the pandemic started, Council's #1 priority has been the health and safety of our citizens, and it will continue to be moving forward. I just want to add that the town of Banff was one of the first organizations in town to mandate vaccines for their employees, and by council passing a motion that directs mayor and councillors to abide by the same COVID-19 vaccination policies of other town of Banff employees, I believe that this action also displays leadership.
Go ahead, Karen. You're muted there.
Brian, you're right. It's a good thing that the town did mandate vaccines, no question. So the thing is that it's well proven that the Dina Hinshaw, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, is not an expert. And unfortunately, she doesn't listen to the medical doctors who are working on the front lines, and the Protect Our Province Alberta videos that are held every Tuesday and Thursday, and sometimes 3 times a week, from these frontline people that are working in the industry night and day and trying to get the government to do the right thing. And it's all based on trying to do and they're doing it on party politics instead of what's right for the public. And I will say that to anyone. Now, we have to have leadership in that situation. We need to protect our workers. Our workers are having to be in front of people that are potentially, not at the moment, but they were in front of people that brought COVID into our community, and we watched it expand, and everybody in Alberta did. Now we got it back under control because, yes, council led, bringing the bus in, mandating vaccines for town, all those things.
You have 30
are good.
seconds left. I'm just going to turn it over to Corey here. Thanks.
Of course.
Thank you, Rob. I just want to say that as mayor, I would foster a culture where we listen to each other, we listen to the public, and we make decisions based on data that we have and information that we have, and we work collaboratively to come up with the best decisions for our community. And again, we're going to have diversity of opinions. We may not always agree, and I welcome that diversity. I think it's healthy, and I think our decisions will be better for it.
And I just like to say, I think that's right. You've got to collaborate with everybody. You do have to seek other expert opinions though. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, that wraps up our forum and debate this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, to, well, first of all 3 mayoral candidates who have joined us here this evening. Thanks for taking the time to speak with the 300 plus people who have joined us throughout this webinar forum here tonight. A big thanks to everyone who was tuned in. For those who did register, there is going to be an email sent to you with a link to the forum that has been recorded, so you can watch anything again in advance, share it with your friends who might not have been here. It will also be streamed on the social media platforms, Banff and Lake Louise Hospitality Association. The candidate information, I believe we're going to be popping that on your screen here really shortly. Some contact emails for everyone running for mayor and council. Of course, you can always go to the Town of Banff website at banff.ca. There's more information there, including phone numbers, websites, Facebook pages, and the like for everyone, all 18 people, amazing, who are running in this municipal election. And just a reminder, advanced voting taking place at Banff Town Hall tomorrow from 3 to 7 and Friday from 10 to 2. The municipal election day is at the Banff Park Lodge this coming Monday from 10 to 8. I'd say please get out and vote, but I'm sure all participants here this evening are intending on voting. That's why you're here. So I hope this evening has been educational for you. I hope you've been informed tonight. And again, thanks to everyone who has participated. Thanks to all of the organizers behind the scenes for making this happen. This is the first time we've ever done this over Zoom, and I think it went pretty well. I hope it went pretty well. I hope everyone took away something here this evening. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Before everybody signs off, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Rob for hosting this evening and keeping us on track. I don't think that's ever happened before, that we've been so on time with such a large candidate pool. And thank you to all of the candidates for attending tonight.
Thanks, Melanie.